Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you so much for taking this time to join our annual meeting. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here today. Feel free to already start introducing yourselves in the chat box. We're just admitting people to the meeting. And we'll get started just in a minute. Okay, thank you, Sean. I wanted to remind you all that this meeting is in two parts. So we have round one that is happening now with the teams of self-supply, news, and data for action. Both rounds will have updates from the network, and you'll get to also meet our new deputy chair and the chair of RWSN Executive Committee. So first meeting is happening now, and the second meeting is happening at 3 p.m. CT. So I'd like to cover just the agenda for today on this first round. So we'll have welcoming and opening remarks from Emmanuel Kuruma, who is the new deputy chair for RWSN, representative from Water for Good and One for All Alliance. We'll have a small segment remembering Eric Bowman, who was the founder of RWSN. And then we'll have a segment of updates from the network by myself and Sean. And then we'll have, this will happen on the first 30 minutes of this meeting. And then we'll move to the members forum. So we'll have presentations from the team's self-supply, multiple use water services, and data for action. So each of these will be segments of 30 minutes where the team leaders will make a presentation of highlights from the year and then plans for 2026, and you'll have opportunity to interact with them as well. And then Sean will make some closing remarks. The whole meeting should last about 2 hours. So next, I would like with this to welcome Emmanuel. Emmanuel, can you hear us?
Yes, please, I can hear you.
Yes, over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aline. Hope my voice is coming out clear.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. So on behalf of our chair, James, and on my own behalf as the vice, I want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this annual meeting. It's a great meeting for us to reflect and also to count our gains through the year and look at the great things we have together achieved and done, and we continue to do together. So I've served for a long time as the country director for Water for Good in Uganda. And starting in November this year, I transitioned to a new role as the vice president for impact and learning, which also aligns perfectly with the kind of work that we are doing together under the Rural Water Supply Network. Coming from One for All Alliance, I bring greetings from our other members, IRC and Water for People, with whom together we continue to develop collective actions, all aimed at strengthening systems for better supply and provision of safe water, sanitation, and hygiene to communities that need it most. And together, we have the hope that we shall reach and serve more people more effectively, not just this year, but in the coming years, and shaping the whole future of WASH around the world. Let's now take a little look through what we have done together through RWSN in this year, 2025. We all know that the year started with the shocking announcement of USAID dismantling. It affected not just us, but I think the whole world, water, health, and all the nexus around WASH, which work towards improving overall health for people that live, especially in areas which are underserved. And this affected us as well. And we continue to hope that many other funders and agencies will come in to fit the void that has been left behind by USAID. We pray that this will end well for the different organizations, especially those which are involved in providing access to safe water for communities in need. But we have also done some work in the governance side. We all know about the governance protocol. This has now been reviewed and renamed RWSN Handbook. This makes it more inclusive, more easy to access, and more relevant to our modern day. I want to thank the team, all those involved in this process of reviewing the governance protocol, which is now RWSN Handbook. And many of you have also been part of this, the biannual executive committee meetings, the theme leaders quarterly meetings. I want to thank you for participating in these meetings and the team at RWSN for making this happen. And so we are glad that we hosted these quarterly theme leaders meetings and the biannual executive committee meetings effectively. We also hosted the career days in February, early this year. This was mostly in collaboration with Agenda for Change and the community of women in water. It creates a future for people that will invest more time into WASH and also employ their skills better in WASH so that we can make the world well served with water, sanitation, and hygiene services, which will significantly reduce disease relating to WASH. And remember, we also hosted the RWSN Women in WASH Mentoring Program. This was in partnership with Agenda for Change, and this was mostly funded by the Global Water Center. And we thank Global Water Center and World Vision too for hosting this and providing funding for these events. Webinars continue to be one of our key activities. Two important ones that I can mention. One is the early series from April to June. This period of webinars covered 6 webinars. And then the second one is the later series from November, December, where also 4 webinars were covered. And so these are altogether 10 webinar series that have happened already. And we continue to thank the team for the effort in making this happen. And the team has also actively prepared and compiled the sector updates in the monthly newsletters, which some of you have had access to and have read. What incredible work done on these newsletters. There are also some conferences and meetings attended. The first of which was in February 2025, AFWASA Congress, which happened in Kampala, Uganda. I was part of this myself, and it was great interacting with different actors involved in WASH during the AFWASA Congress in Kampala. The second to mention is the Stockholm in August 2026, the World Water Week. I also had the privilege of attending this and looking at the great work that RWSN was doing and bringing us together to discuss different items on the space. And the third one to mention is the UN Water Meeting in Geneva, which also our team attended. So we are grateful for these engagements, and these continue to make us more visible and more relevant in the sector, and will continue even in the future. So now the team is actively involved together in raising resources to cover funding gaps. We are hoping that the funding gaps left will be filled so that our work will not be disrupted by funding-related challenges. So as of now, there's some active projects that are ongoing, one of which is the Stop the Rot, which is aimed at prevention of early corrosion in boreholes and hand pumps. Very interesting, but also impactful project indeed. The second one is the Stronger Together Coalition. It's a grant from Hilton to support 6 women's networks operating in water resources and the waste space. And the third one is the BGR, which is supporting groundwater advocacy in Africa. So a lot of work is going on, and I want to take the honor to invite all of you to this meeting and appreciate you for coming. And on this wonderful day, as we open this annual meeting, as I open this annual meeting officially, I also want to remember Eric Bowman, one of the founders of RWSN, on whom Sean would have more information to share with us after this. So let me take this time now to invite Sean to please take us on from there with Eric's communication. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you so much for all your contribution and wisdom that you shared this year, and your enthusiasm and support, not just of you, but the whole Water for Good and One for All Alliance team over the course of the year. We really appreciate. The network is only as strong as its partners and members. So thank you so much. So before we get into the real substance of the meeting, I just want to take a moment to reflect and remember on a great person, great man who passed away sadly just over a week ago at the age of 81, which is not a bad innings. I'd be happy to get to 81. Eric was a fantastic individual who, I think it's not overstating it by saying that his work touched the lives of millions, if not tens of millions of people, because through his work on hand pumps, on hand pump designs, he played an active role in really formalizing a lot of how hand pumps were standardized, both in terms of policy in governments, but also standardized in terms of making available designs that anyone could access. You can download them today from our website if you want to know exactly what the different components of an India Mark II or an Afridev or a Tara. Then millions of hand pumps have been manufactured over the last few decades to specifications that he played an instrumental role in bringing together, getting agreement on, and getting that out there into the world. But also he played a key role in being part of that founding group, along with Peter Wurzel and Rupert Talbot and others back in 1992, that came up with the concept of having a group dedicated to hand pump technology, and that became the Hand Pump Technology Group. That and he then took on that central role at SCAT here in St. Gallen in Switzerland to not just be comfortable with just focusing on hand pumps, but really looking deeper each time about what are the issues around hand pumps, and realizing with colleagues that there are many more issues than just the design of the pump itself. There are issues around how the borehole is drilled. There's issues around the management of the borehole. There's issues around who's actually buying them. A lot of issues are recognition for self-supply, that a lot of pumps and boreholes are being built by individual households. A lot of investment is coming from households and institutions themselves, not just from these big government or donor programs. So he really laid the groundwork for what happened in the mid-2000s when a gentleman called Piers Cross from WSP at World Bank and colleagues then revolutionized HTN to become the rural water supply network that we know today. Now, we didn't overlap. Eric retired in 2009 and handed over to Kirsten Dannett, who many of you will know. And then I joined SCAT and RWSN in 2011. But I had some really great interactions with Eric. I did a hand pump training course in Austria in 2012, where I spent a week with him, and that was that was really great, and we got to know each other a bit then. He had very, very, very dry sense of humor, very lovely guy. But also he handed over RWSN extremely well. I feel that it was just like when he and his family moved back to Ireland, where his wife was from. He pretty much left us to it. It's just like, you guys, there we go. It's all yours. You deal with it once, but I'm here if you have any questions. And quite often I would sort of email him, and he would come in, but he would come back to Switzerland once or twice a year and pop into the office, and we'd see him. So he really played that important mentoring role, but otherwise was very hands off and let us get on with it. I think it's also worth mentioning that he also played a pivotal role in the evolution of SCAT as an organization. SCAT, which originally stands for the German version, in German is the Swiss Center for Appropriate Technology, was founded in 1978 as a part of the University of St. Gallen, which is why we're here in St. Gallen, which otherwise makes no sense. Because you'd expect us to be somewhere like Zurich or Geneva, but actually it's turned out to be a really great place to be. And it was originally a resource center, a library that people came here to St. Gallen to visit the library, get advice. But in the 1990s, he joined in 1984. He turned down a job at the World Bank to come back to Switzerland to join SCAT. But by mid-90s, he had played an instrumental role in revolutionizing the SCAT from being a Verein, an association, to being a for-profit consulting company. And then 2002 was as managing director. He then also led the creation of SCAT Foundation, which is who I now work for. So he played not only did he lead the transformation of an evolution of RWSN as a global network, but he also led the evolution and transformation of SCAT as an organization, and two organizations. So you can see that from that he was he's very quiet, not hugely, not the sort of person you would necessarily associate as a leader, not a big kind of like personality that would like command presence in a room with being big and loud. He was quiet, softly spoken, but his attention to detail, his attention to quality, and his interpersonal skills and building trust with people is actually the more important leadership qualities that he brought. And so, yeah, just I feel very honored to kind of continue his legacy, and wish him his family all the best in the future. So anyway, so please do, there's lots of material that we have that's written by him. If you want to, there's a great blog post that he wrote a few years to celebrate RWSN's 30th anniversary. You can read a bit more about his background, and there's if you want to leave a message for the family, there's the link there on the slides as well. Anyway, let's now move to the present. And Aline and I are now going to give you an update on where we are today and what we've been up to this year, and then a look forward. So, but before we do that, just to give you a quick overview of who and what is RWSN today. And I'm delighted that we are, I'm really proud of our wonderful partners from all over the world, really great organizations, really great individuals. Our chair, James, who became the chair of the network last year, and has been incredibly dynamic, incredibly helpful throughout this difficult time. And likewise, everyone on the executive committee has been extremely active and extremely engaged, and we're just grateful to all of these people at this it's been a tricky year, but we're getting through it. And then I also just want to take a moment to just recognize the real engine of RWSN, the real, where the real ideas, the real energy comes from. That's our fantastic group of theme leaders. So we have our 6 themes, and within that we have groups, we have individuals that really bring a whole range of different experiences, different perspectives to the network, and they bring the ideas that around which we develop the webinars, develop publications, get involved in events. All the best ideas come from these guys. So so we really just want to take a moment to appreciate them, and then finally just to appreciate the secretariat team of Aline and Fatima, and also supported by my colleagues Andrea and Valerie and Angelica, who just, they're just wonderful people to work with, and it's every day is just a joy because of them. So just a huge appreciation from me. Now I'd like to hand over to Aline to talk about the webinars this year.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much, Sean. So you already heard from our chair, so I'm just showing a little bit more the pictures and the key numbers from what we have done this year. So we had 2 webinar series. The early webinar series had about 6 webinars, all translated to English and French. We had over 1,100 participants that actually attended live, and a bit more that registered for the webinars from 105 countries. And we had a total number of 40 speakers from 6 continents. So I'll show you a little bit a picture of the speakers as well. And then for the late webinar series, we are having 4 webinars and this annual meeting. So there's still 1 more webinar happening next week. So up to now, 1,600 people registered for the webinars. We are still counting the numbers of the webinar for next week. So please continue to engage. So Sean, if you move to the next slide. Just wanted to again acknowledge and give thanks to the wonderful speakers that have worked with our team leaders on the various webinars. So all these recordings are available on our website. We have the recordings of the webinars as well as the slides that were shared on them. Great content. So please, if you have not attended or if you'd like to just refresh your memory on what was discussed, please revisit our webinar series, and we'll be trying to share more summarized insights of what each webinar covered. So next slide. This is a thank you for the webinar speakers of the late series. We've had so far 3 webinars. And if you move to the next, just because of time, I wanted to just remind you that next week, Tuesday, we will have the final webinar of this series that will be discussing corrosion of end pumps, so by the Stop the Rot project. So please do join us. We do have a great lineup of speakers for this webinar as well. So next, another big program that we had this year was our mentoring program. So this year, again, we collaborated with Agenda for Change. So both the traditional RWSN mentoring program and the Women in WASH mentoring program were hosted on the same platform. And we had a record 488 participants on this year's edition from 81 countries, and 62% of them were women, which really makes us happy because we are trying to address the big gap that we have on the WASH sector, that fewer women are represented on the workforce. We had the support of World Vision and Global Water Center for this program as well. And we had 3 tracks. So the Women in WASH, as I mentioned already, and the RWSN traditional track. And then we had a special track for solar powered water systems alumni. So this also was a more technical track of the mentoring program. We have our report, the report for the mentoring program already available on our website. So you can go through the highlights and in more detail on the report. Because of time, I'll move on to the next section. Sorry, this is still just the highlights of our mentoring program. So please do check out the website for the report. And I think Fatima is putting the link on the chat box. So the next. Sean, I think you talk about this part of the partnerships. Sean?
Yeah, sorry, I was struggling with the mute button there. Yes, so just to, I think actually Emmanuel's covered a lot of this already, so I don't really need to say too much more. Other than we have had a great partnership with BGR this year on various aspects of the groundwater theme, and we're currently doing some work on drilling associations to better understand their role in improving sustainable groundwater development. We're currently doing a small piece of work for SNV as part of the Wash Systems for Health program, looking at joint sector reviews and their role in sector coordination and wash systems. So that's really interesting. And very happy to announce that as of about a week ago, the Osprey Foundation have confirmed that they're providing support to the RWSN Secretariat for the next two years. So we're incredibly grateful to them. So thank you. And also just thank you as well to the other member organizations and executive partners that also contribute financially to the Secretariat, because that really makes those contributions enable us to do activities that are focused on you as the members rather than just doing what the client wants. Those are also important. So and it's also great news that through the grants such as from the Conrad and Hilton Foundation, that we're able to continue the mentoring program, as Aline has alluded to, in partnership with other networks. And I think this has been a theme of this year and the year going forward, is that we're going to be working a lot more. We've been working with the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance, Susanna, for a couple of years now. We're now working a lot more with the Women in Water Diplomacy Network and other networks. So this ecosystem of water and wash networks is really functioning extremely well and is the way forward. So, yep. And yeah, and then finally, just say that for next year, there's the All Systems Symposium in Africa event being led by the One for All Alliance, and that's going to be in Rwanda in July. So we're hoping to be present there. The other big event that I want to highlight to you is the Alliance for Rural Electrification. They have the Energy Access Investment Forum. One of the big partnerships that we're currently developing at the moment, which I'm really excited about, is linking rural water supply and rural electrification and sticking them together. So if you want to know more about that, please get in contact with me, because we've got some really exciting things coming up on that. And there's an event in Nairobi in April on that we would really like to get as many RWSN members there as possible to build those bridges and get our sort of rural water supply organizations who are doing solar pumping, anything involving energy, in front of investors for rural electrification. So if you want money from the energy sector, come and talk to me. Yeah, we've got new mentoring, and we're going to be doing a member survey as well. That's something that we want to really hear from you, listen to you, hear your experiences, and give us feedback on what we're doing well and what we can improve. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll just give a very, very brief highlight of some of the events that we convened or co-hosted across the year. So already Emmanuel alluded to the Water and Wash Career Days that we did in March. So we did these in collaboration with Agenda for Change and the Community of Women in Water. It was a precursor to the mentoring program. We had 7 virtual sessions. Sean, if you can move to the next slide. Yeah, so here are just the topics that we covered: starting and shifting your careers, how to get funding, and peer learning. And we had also amazing speakers, and with support of World Vision and the Global Water Center. So thank you so much for the speakers. And again, all the recordings to these are available on our website and on the playlist linked up on this slide. Next. We also were at AFWASA conference in Kampala, where we were able to meet with several partners of the network, so with members of the exec committee, with our team leader from Sustainable Services that was also attending, and we were able to establish also new partnerships with AFWASA and other organizations that we engage with in Kampala. Next. This is also just to put a little bit more pictures to what we already shared. So we are also at Stockholm. Again, here, the highlight, we co-hosted 3 sessions, one with Water Mission on carbon financing, another one with Agenda for Change, covering climate resilience wash. And then we had the groundwater meetup together with BGR, and we co-hosted the Women's Mingle from Stronger Together. And we also signed a memorandum of understanding with the Women in Water Diplomacy Network that allows us to work more closely together with them in several projects. So next. I think you also heard on our news, but just to bring back to mind, we got this grant from Hilton that Sean already mentioned. So we are supporting women's networks, about 6 women's networks that are working to improve the representation of women in the water sector, professional women in particular. So I'll not go into details, but more details are available on our website as well regarding Stronger Together. Next. Sorry, here is the mission: to unite like-minded networks and organizations with the ultimate goal of empowering women professionals working in the challenges related to water resources, water sanitation and hygiene systems, and to be change makers and leaders globally. So you'll definitely hear more of this as the project progresses, but so far we've had the mingles as the highlight of one of the collaborative activities that we are doing together, and the mentoring program as well. Next. In terms of publications, you'll hear more of these during the team sections, but we have the Muse team leaders publishing the Water for Life publication. You'll hear more from them. Our annual report is also available on our website, was launched in June of this year, and we also have been updating our website. Next. Another very active thing that has been going on our blog. We've got some partnership going on with the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralists. So Kirsten Dannard and Barbara, our team leader from Muse, have been collaborating with this group, and we had a series of monthly blogs focusing on pastoralists and water. So you can see the whole list of blogs available here on this slide, and they are all available on our blog as well. And we've had several guest blogs from team leaders and other partners on various topics also listed here. If we can move. And stop the rot. Maybe I push back to you, Sean. We are eating a little bit into the self-supply block, but maybe if you want to just share a very quick highlight from Stop the Rot.
Yeah, just that this third and final phase of the Stop the Rot program is really focusing on providing really clear guidance on how to avoid corrosion issues. And this is not just, I mean, we've started off with hand pumps because that's the most obvious thing, but actually the issue of corrosion then links into hardware quality, links into quality control, quality performance, a whole much bigger issue around quality, particularly of any hardware, not just hand pumps. So this is why it's actually a bigger strategic systemic issue than maybe initially is available. But at the same time, hand pumps, there's still tens of millions, hundreds of millions of them out there. They're still being used every day by a lot of people. So there's still we still feel there's a responsibility to make sure that those that do still need them and use them get the best possible service.
Okay, thank you. And here we just want to give a big shout out and thank you to our member organizations on silver category that have been supporting financially the network. So here are their logos. So thank you very much to all of them. And next. Just other activities RWSN has been involved with the UN Water, particularly on the Innovation Task Group and the World Water Development Report process. We've hosted a member organization event this year focused on financial viability and business models in August. As the chair already mentioned, we have been compiling the monthly updates, and our social media channels continue to grow thanks to the support of all of you. So thank you so much. I think now we need to hand over to the self-supply team. They have been very patiently waiting to get started. And we can take questions for now on the chat box, and then when we have a little bit more time for Q&A, we'll try to cover them. So I would like to hand over to Diana and Tim Foster to continue the presentation of self-supply team. Thank you. Welcome,
Thanks
Diana.
so much. Thank you, Aline. And hello, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here. My name is Diana Gonzalez, and I am a senior researcher at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia. So it's good evening from me here in Sydney. And so together with my colleague, Tim Foster, who is a research director at the same institute as me, we lead the self-supply theme. So today I will give you a short update of the theme for self-supply, where we're focused, what we've achieved in 2025, and what we're planning for the year ahead. So to start with, I'll go through our ongoing priorities for the theme. So one of our core aims is to continue to increase awareness of the scale of self-supply and the significant contribution that it makes to global water security. And I assume many of you are already familiar with the numbers, but if you're not, and just for context, based on our studies and a lot of the research that we have done, we've estimated that 1 in 6 households worldwide rely on private wells for their drinking and domestic water needs, which is approximately 1 billion people. And that's not including other sources of self-supply water. That's only talking about groundwater. So for us, part of our work is helping the sector recognize this contribution and to understand its connection to SDG 6.1. And then our second priority is strengthening knowledge exchange on what actually works in practice, because we know things don't always go to plan. But we're particularly focused on 4 areas for how to strengthen self-supply. So the first one is market-based approaches that can support households to improve or upgrade their water supply. There are a lot of innovations happening in local supply chains, small businesses, and informal service providers. So partnering with private sector market-based approaches, and we want to keep spotlighting these examples and identifying what helps them thrive and what helps to make self-supply a safer and more reliable water source. Then the second area is focusing on policy and regulatory engagement. So we're seeing more governments and development partners take an interest in how self-supply fits into their national rural water strategies. And this includes lessons from high-income contexts where household wells and small supplies are already a regulated part of the system. And also includes examples from developing countries when they're also taking the lead and really setting the example for how to include self-supply within the broader framework for water security. Then the third area is water quality management, especially looking at practical strategies and products that help households reduce risks. And there's still a big gap between awareness of contamination and the tools available to manage it. So this remains a key area for learning. And finally, we still have the intention of collaborating with the Leave No One Behind theme, particularly exploring how self-supply interacts with gender equality and how different household dynamics shape access and decision-making for water services. And so together, these priorities help us position self-supply as a legitimate and complementary part of rural water systems rather than something that is peripheral or that is happening ad hoc without any sort of support or regulation or oversight. So I hope that was thorough enough in terms of explaining our priorities. So now I want to move on to the highlights from this year. So looking back on 2025, we've had a really productive year, I think. One of the main highlights, as was mentioned already in the intro, was our webinar on self-supply policy and regulation. So we brought in examples from 4 countries. They were Indonesia, Vietnam, Ethiopia, and Germany. So a really broad spread across the globe. And it generated a lot of interest, and the discussion showed how differently countries interpret their role in supporting or overseeing household debt solutions and what steps governments are taking to support self-supply and regulate it. We also collaborated with the Water Integrity Network on a webinar exploring integrity issues and self-supply. So the talk focused on supported self-supply and the implications for water and sanitation financing and integrity. And we've also made sure that self-supply was visible at key global events. So we had a presence at different conferences and events. So one of them was the Climate Resilient Pathways Conference in Bangkok in April. We also attended the Sanitation and Water for All Sector Ministers meeting in Madrid in October. And we'll also be having a presence at the upcoming IWA Water and Development Congress in Bangkok next week. So why we do this is to make sure that we connect to the wider sector in conversations on climate adaptation, inclusive service models, and how to recognize household investment in national planning. We've also started planning contributions to the 2027 World Water Development Report on water and health. And overall, we're seeing growing interest in self-supply from both practitioners and governments, which we think is really a positive sign. So next, looking ahead to 2026, we want to continue building on this momentum. So we've set 3 key areas for our plans for next year. First, we want to keep highlighting self-supply at major sector events, including All Systems Africa and the UN Water Conference, because as I mentioned, visibility is really important and it helps ensure that self-supply are part of global conversations on resilience, finance, and service delivery. And second, we want to explore opportunities for water safety planning in self-supply context. As I've mentioned, this is an area where there's still many open questions about what's realistic, what's practical, what's appropriate, what's a scalable approach. And so we'd like to bring experiences together to build some shared learning and cross-learning for the network. And finally, we want to promote the financing upside of household investment. So households invest billions of dollars of their own money on providing water every year. And this remains one of the least recognized and least leveraged parts of the financing puzzle for water services. So with the 2025 GLASS results coming, we've had a look at evidence base to work from, and we hope to use that to support more informed dialogue with governments and donors and how to recognize and incentivize household investment. So we will continue to share our learnings, run events and webinars, and partner with whoever is interested in self-supply to make it a better understood part of the broader system and not an isolated approach. So I hope you got something out of the presentation. And now we would really like to hear from you. And please, I haven't been looking at the chat, but if you haven't yet, please feel free to post questions or share your reflections. I don't know if the next slide will show up, Sean. Yeah. Great. So yeah, just some thoughts there. We just want to learn where you see the biggest opportunity for advancing self-supply in your context or your country, or what is one challenge you'd like for us to focus on next year, or any other thoughts you'd like to share. In the meantime, while you think, and I think we don't have much time anyway, but I will go through some questions that were submitted through the registration form. So thank you so much for engaging with that. That was really interesting to see what were the burning questions, what were the things that people are thinking about and want to know more about. So I've just selected a few questions and we'll see how we do for time. But the first one was, a question around how to include self-supply into country-level WASH policies and plans, and how to accelerate self-supply globally. And that's a really good question because, as I hope you got from the context and the intro setting, that self-supply is not small by any means. And so it is important to make sure it's integrated and that we're able to accelerate how self-supply is supported and used. So I think the first part or the first step is to start with recognition, and that most countries already have huge numbers of households relying on self-supply, but policies don't often even recognize that that is part of the water picture. And so starting with recognition first, then integrating self-supply into different frameworks, such as like water monitoring, water quality investment, introducing them into water strategies, rural water strategies, and financing frameworks, and also consider them in standards and regulation. And then sharing evidence on what works as well. We can learn from experiences in other countries, and that's what we've tried to do through the webinars. And I think that's also where the role of the network comes in, and is convening that learning and elevating examples and supporting countries with tools, with practical approaches that have worked elsewhere, and then integrating self-supply as well into global dialogues across the sector.
Yeah. Diana, we have already 3 questions on the chat box. So you can start maybe with the question from Derek. So he says, how do we ensure that we are not setting up a situation for the privatization of water by people who can exploit the opportunity for unregulated water services provision?
Is that in the chat?
In the chat box, yes.
I just had to read it again. Thanks for that question, Derek. I think that privatization of water services is probably quite different to self-supply in many ways. When I think of privatization, I'm thinking of a shared water resource. There's a distribution system, whatever that looks like. When I think of self-supply, I'm thinking, for example, in my experience in Asia and the Pacific, I'm thinking of rainwater harvesting tanks that are installed at each individual household, or I'm thinking of boreholes that are dug by households themselves. So there's a lot, often this is all individual household investment, and I don't know how they can be easily privatized. So I'm sorry if I'm not understanding the question exactly, but I think what I want to highlight from your question is the unregulated of water service provision, because that's a big challenge with self-supply, is that no one is monitoring that rainwater tank that you've installed and maybe the household hasn't cleaned in several years, and perhaps the quality of it is not safe anymore, or same for wells. So that's where the government comes in. And I think that was one of the questions that also came through the registration form, is what can we do with water quality for self-supply? And I think this is where market-based solutions could also come in, and is working with community-based businesses, because it's really difficult to monitor water quality in a very dispersed water system, as self-supply often is. If you think of rural areas where each household has their own water system, it's not centralized by any means. So it could rely on community-based water quality monitoring, businesses or small private enterprises that are already running and operating. And so partnership, I think, would be a very practical way of monitoring water quality for self-supply. I hope that answers part of your question at least. I'll go to the next question from Michael. So the question is, can we journey together with our partners in terms of developing capacity building activities to more vulnerable communities within my country on impacts of drought mitigation aspects? I think, yeah, capacity building is such a core part of sustaining water systems anywhere and everywhere. Often, again, I think I will go back to private sector market-based solutions because they are people ready to provide the materials and the know-how for maintaining systems as well. When it comes to drought and mitigation aspects of self-supply, that's really tricky because often when people don't have enough storage capacity and they've run out of water or as a shared resource, and we've heard from people in Vietnam, for example, they have their own private groundwater systems, but they are finding that they're having to pay more and more in electricity to pump water or drill deeper because they're not getting the same yield that they used to when they first invested in these wells. And so it's really important to think also as a shared resource and to engage government in managing licensing, in monitoring what water is being extracted. So it's not an easy solution. It's very complicated, but I will go back to saying that recognition is the first step for making sure that we are able to secure water services for all people who self-supply, people who get water elsewhere or pay the utility or however different modalities, and also in saying that many people have diverse sources of water. So people self-supply, but then they also have piped water connections, and they may choose which one to use depending on different factors such as cost or seasonality. So if it's cheaper for me to use rainwater when it's rainy season because I don't need to pay for it, I will use that. During the dry season, I might just revert back to my piped water connection, even though it costs me more money, but it's more reliable compared to rainwater, for example. How much time do we have left, Aline? Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, for 4 minutes. So I think you can take one or two more.
Okay.
I think both Alexis and Eng's questions are still on the topic of water quality.
Great. So Alexis' question is, actually, Alexis, do you want to unmute yourself and ask it? I think we're supposed to be doing a bit of interaction here.
Yes, we
Hi.
can allow.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
You can hear me good?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Alexis Wasula. I live in Kenya. My question was basically, I'm worried that if you start bringing policies and regulating self-supply, it will become as red tape as the other one, which takes really long. Sometimes licensing takes so long that by the time your system is ready for you to use without fear of someone coming in and asking who gave you the right, or, self-supply is supposed to be easier. At least that's why I choose it.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And gosh, you get so much richness from just hearing you express yourself rather than reading the question. So thank you so much for unmuting yourself and sharing that. I think there's so much truth to what you say. Self-supply is supposed to be easy. Why do we want regulation to make it red tape and make it harder to access? And to me, that talks a lot about bureaucracy and what you might encounter. But what I'll go back and say is that regulation, the purpose of regulation is to make sure that it's safe. That's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is also to make sure that it's sustainable, so that there are standards to be met in the interest of people's health and also as a shared resource. So while regulation can maybe deter some people from adopting self-supply, in my experience and my opinion and what we've seen in our research is that regulation actually supports better self-supply. So we call it supported self-supply. So it's not regulation where, someone might say you don't have permission to install a rainwater tank in your house because, often if you're using your own private funds to do that, I don't imagine there's a lot government can do to enforce something like that. But when I was doing research in Vietnam, for example, we went to a district where the government only had like 2,000 registered wells, but they estimated that the reality is that there was probably 100 times more than that. And they just had no control and oversight because there was just so unregulated and people were not reporting that they were having huge problems with the water quality, saltwater intrusion, and just not enough. So over abstraction, basically. So I think, yeah, it's interesting to hear from the individual household perspective, what might be your impression of why regulation might not be a great thing. But when we think about the resource more broadly, and I guess the ensuring better quality and better outcomes for a community or country, a population, I do think regulation to some extent, to the extent that makes it safer, is really important. Thanks so much for that question and sharing your experience. I think I maybe used up a lot of time.
Sorry, we started your session a bit late. Maybe one final question and then we move to Muse.
Okay. So
Anyone wants to unmute?
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this is Marta. I'm from Ethiopia. I work for IDE. So my question is like, how effective is a market-based approach, especially in strengthening self-supply water system? And what are the factors that influence household to willingly and ability to invest on the improved water system?
Thanks so much for your question. And yeah, I love that you're asking me about market-based solutions coming from IDE. We've worked with IDE and yeah, I love your market-based approaches. So that is something that we want to learn more about. So in terms of what can be done, I think there's experiences that we can draw from across the world. But something that we wanted to definitely know more about is how to upgrade, for example, water supply systems. And we think that we've heard of a lot of innovation happening. There's local supply chains that, for example, in countries like Vanuatu or Solomon Islands, where you have very small island contexts, where it's very difficult to even access the market for parts or even for services. There is a lot of opportunity there, and there's already small businesses functioning and informal service providers that are able to fill in gaps, which is already what self-supply is doing, is filling in gaps where utility or a government-provided service isn't able to reach everyone the way that is expected. And there's opportunity too for the private sector to do that there as well. I don't want to take any more time, Aline. Thank you.
Yeah, I know the discussion is very interesting, but we are moving on to Muse, so some of these topics are still relevant. So Ink and Mutala, if you can write your questions on the chat box, Diana could maybe answer in writing, but now we'd like to move on to the Muse team. So Barbara?
Hi, everyone. Yes, thank you. Very interesting, Diana. Very much Muse-related in any case. The four of us, Raj can't participate, he's in the USA. David, I saw him online, that's great, and Ryan will talk about Nepal. So let me quickly introduce the next slide, please. About the Muse team's current priorities, which is really sharing the wealth of lessons that are coming up since the early 2000s, when the irrigation and the wash sector, we both realized, hey, our systems designed for a single use is used for other uses as well. Basically realizing it's the same people with the multiple water needs, the multiple sources, and often multi-purpose infrastructure on the ground. And our challenge was really how to get the support agencies, the subsidies for irrigation, and very much the human right to water for domestic uses as a priority. How can we shape the cross-sectoral collaboration to make it work? And we are also now in general looking where can we collaborate more? Where is the interest of the other members of the Rural Water Supply Network, and where can we work together? Next slide, please. Handing over then first to you, Narayan, about the many highlights in Nepal this year. Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. Namaste from Nepal. Yes, yeah, we tried some good activities on moose related things in Nepal. And one of the good event was moose webinar in support of, team leaders and RWSN, Nepal Moose Network. Conducted one sharing learning moose session on 10th of June, and there was a presentation from 10 different organizations, and it was very good. And after the presentation, we also discussed and agreed to prepare the write-up so that it might be a good summary of the presentation, and we are working on that, and hope it will be completed by the end of December. So that will reflect all the what we shared during the webinar. And another is this training capacity building work in Nepal, particularly this where I'm working. We have updated the moose design system with the application, software application, with the use of the DGPS, and we are providing the training to the engineers, mainly to the local government engineers from the local government and different NGOs as well, and obviously the project staff and some of the university civil engineering students. We have every year we organize the training, and it is continuing. It became 3 years already, and we trained, I think, more than 250 or something like that. So it helping to know about the moose, and also to understand the type of different type of moose and its design system. And the good thing, we are advocating every level in Nepal, like 3 tiers of the government is there, federal, provincial, and local. And we are advocating every tiers. And now the government, the Department of Water Supply and Sewerage Management is in process of updating the National Water Supply Design Guideline. And we are advocating for that, and it is already, well recognized, and the team of consultant is already mobilized by the department, and we are in very close with the consultant and the department, and it will be included on the that updated the moose design system will be included in this newly updated National Water Supply Design Guideline, which would be the very good steps and milestone for the moose design system. So altogether, these are some of the good highlights from Nepal, and over to Barbara.
Thanks for all the inspiration as well from Nepal. Great. And that is one example of what we have done then in the white paper. Beautiful. Thanks very much to the Rural Water Supply Network for helping, providing support as for the webinars as well. So it's top class. This white paper summarizes the lessons learned of the past 15, 20 years. So what is moose? How did it come about? Basically in the rural areas, of course, water for domestic uses are life, but life is also comes also from productive activities, livestock year-round, cropping, vegetables, fisheries, etc., which then also becomes more variable during the seasons. So always starting with how do people do they do it already since time immemorial, self-supply, otherwise they would have died. But how can we then, as I mentioned, get the sectors to collaborate, and what are the benefits from that? And then we got inspiring examples from Colombia by Isabel Dominguez, Southern Africa from WaterNet, headed by Jean-Marie Kileshi, and also from Kenya through James Otieno, from the World Bank, also looking how can we, or financing mechanisms, how can they support both domestic and small-scale productive uses for the right to food. So I recommend. Then the issue of regulation came already up. Of course, water quality is one point. The other point is the sharing of the water resources. As in arid areas, pastoralism, etc., is a clear example where in the dry season things have to change. And how are communities, how are they managing that since time immemorial again? And we are now also linking up with a global debate on the recognition of customary water tenure. So we should start with how people already do it. And then the role of governments is to recognize that legal pluralism. So on the one hand, the regulation from the top, but very much the customary community-based normative frameworks on sharing water as well. There is now this international global dialogue on water tenure, as they call it. And yeah, there are already some links with the pastoralists, but basically the same issues, how to combine multiple water sources, surface, groundwater, wetlands, runoff, rain, how to manage those multiple sources for domestic and small-scale productive uses as efficiently multi-purpose infrastructure as possible. That comes up. It's not only pastoralism, it's that bigger issue. There are a lot of issues on the regulation and already mentioned bureaucracies, permitting, it just doesn't work. So what can work is instead really more bottom-up. Yeah, and last point is that we are trying to get all the information available on MOES since the early 2000s, how to get it properly communicated. And IRC has been the champion up till 2014 and still has a very valuable depository, but how is rural water supply that taking forward? Next slide, please. Because what are we planning for the coming year? Continuing to share also the very technical GIS, etc., the technical capacity of designing for multiple uses through a webinar again, but also enable a number of very concrete workshops, intensive workshops, etc. And another initiative, and David, I saw you online.
Yes, I'm here.
You are our expert group champion. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barbara. Sorry, I can't put my camera on. I have a unstable internet connection, but hopefully you can hear me well. Yes, as Barbara mentioned, there's 4 of us in this as team leaders in MOES, and we were considering how well that was working to actually expand the group somewhat. And so we are looking at actually creating an expert group where the expert group members would really form part of this theme, where they will participate in more or less 2 expert group meetings per year, contribute to working discussions and knowledge exchange that we will have through the different platforms. We'll also look to engage with the expert group members in presenting or bringing in different speakers in the annual Moose webinars. And then I think probably the most interesting would be to engage and co-author particular communication materials, whether that's white papers and policy briefs or technical notes and infographics, and indeed provide thought leadership and innovative ideas to Moose implementation, whether that's from governance, financing, or scaling of Moose. So at the moment, there's 4 of us that are leading this group. We wouldn't want to push it more than 15 members in the group altogether. So really, we would look for 11 members that we would look to sort of our own networks or indeed this type of meeting today, where we open and launch any interest that you would like to express in becoming a Moose expert. And we will have an open call that will be launched through the RWSN network feeds and websites, so that we can actually see how to develop that group going forward. So that was just a very brief update from that side. Then maybe back to you, Barbara.
Thanks so much. You just came out of a plane, so it's great you could make it. Thank you. Yeah, then the last proposal is to do a poll to again for us to see, yeah, where is the interest, what are the opinions, etc. I hope you can see the questions now. And the first one, yeah, can you see? The first one, there are 4 questions and there are several, okay, thanks. There are several options in the 4 questions, so you have to scroll down. And the first one is then the issue water infrastructure. We are in our silos for a single use, either domestic or irrigation or livestock, etc. What is the reality on the ground? Is it a good thing? Is it something that we should prohibit because it challenges the uses that were in the design, for which there was also funding and expertise in the support? Or let's promote it because there are more benefits. It's not only domestic uses, but also income or food, nutrition, etc. And the other options, please, or anything, write it in the chat. Yeah. The issues of drinking water quality already came up. If the scheme is designed, one option is really a domestic scheme to homesteads, etc. Let's forget about point of use treatment. The whole scheme should be safe. On the other hand, well, if we focus on 3 liters per person per day, that should be safe. Even irrigation that is used for domestic uses and for drinking, especially. Laundry doesn't need clean water. But if it is for drinking, everybody knows how to get 3 liters per capita clean. That would be an option for any scheme. Then the issue came already a bit up, the issue of groundwater overdraft. So the infrastructure is there, but then the water to flow into the infrastructure is not there anymore, because that's where the competition takes place, especially the dry season. Well, one option is that there is not an issue at all. Everybody talks about it, the climate change, but in many situations, water infrastructure is still underdeveloped. So the water use is still underdeveloped. So there is more than enough groundwater still to tap, and anyhow it recharges each year. Okay, but then if there is competition, who are the competitors and where should we regulate? Is that in the community or is that outside the community? The urban uses, the large-scale plantations, the land and water grabs that take place, mining, etc. And then the last question is, what is a bigger issue, the quality or the quantity? And then again, there are several options, so please scroll down. We don't need, if there is too much pollution, there is no proper groundwater at all, water resource, so that's really the issue. But the other option is that it's really a water quantity issue, or both, or neither is a problem. So we look forward to your views on that. And then I hand over to the managers of the poll to show the
We are
figures.
at 36% now, so maybe we give 1 more minute for people to respond. But meanwhile, those that have completed already the poll, you can, if you have any questions, you can write them on the chat box, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to raise your question via voice. So please, if you want to speak, just raise your hand, and as soon as we finish with the poll, you'll be having the opportunity to put your questions. Okay, I think maybe I'll just end the poll because it seems like it's not moving so much now. Maybe some people are not able to use it on their device. So, Barbara, if you want to comment a little bit on the results, then we move to the Q&A.
Okay, let me go up. Yeah. Interesting. The first question that there is still quite some fear that, I suppose, especially productive uses impact negatively on the domestic uses. And it was designed for everyone's domestic uses. And if there are 1 or 2 big users then who start irrigating 1 hectare, yeah, then it can affect the domestic uses. Well, that's one of the reasons. But 60% also say it's other. Sorry, it is let us use multi-purpose infrastructure as a cost-effective way to get water for the right to domestic water and the right to food to realize, and especially then leaving no one behind. Yeah, and interesting that also for the second question. That there is that the idea of getting all water safe in domestic systems remains important, rather than focusing on point of use treatment. But yeah, if it can be safe, we can discuss that further. And then the last question, that the competition is everywhere. It's within and outside the community. And this has enormous implications for how to deal with competition. Because if you have competition within your community, how can you organize together to deal with the competition with your upstream community or your downstream community for surface water? Yeah, which also then highlights the whole issue of the nature of competition for water. Is it more localized, like groundwater, although that also flows, or is it really a river that can be transboundary, etc., where you have to deal in transboundary negotiations? Okay, interesting that the competition for water resources is not seen as the biggest problem, but that it is both the pollution and the competition. Yeah, that's and that nobody says that there are no issues in any of that. Do the other team leaders, do you have suggestions, Narayan or David?
No, not from my side.
Okay. I see that Narayan not either, I guess.
Yeah, maybe just a note. So there are some additional comments on the chat box. So from Grace, that water pollution is rampant, especially in rivers and streams running through settlements, and partially treated or untreated wastewater is directly discharged into it, and no laws are enforced to stop. So if we have questions for the news team, now is the opportunity to either raise your hand or write your question on the chat box.
I see one comment by Derek from South Africa, one of the champions on moose since the early 2000s, even before, maybe. One of the... and it is, you say things are changing, with people realizing that they have no option. And people are now accommodating moose, including government structures. So over time, in South Africa, in any case, and maybe elsewhere as well, that at least the need for a recognition of all water users is of the fact that there are multiple water needs is getting accepted. And it's good to hear, Derek. I don't know whether you would like to indicate a bit more what the options are and how they are accommodating in your experience.
Thanks, Barbara, and nice poll. Yes, I think there is a groundswell now growing where the regulator was saying, no, we're putting communities at risk with these systems because we can't guarantee quality, and sometimes we can't guarantee the quantity of water because we aspire to provide services at a certain standard. But simply that's not happening. And even the government structures are saying, well, these systems need to be accommodated and we need to see how we can build them into the complete comprehensive suite of services delivery. So I think having most systems on standby for so many years has been such a good thing because now they are now coming into their own where they're starting to be recognized as part of the suite of providing services. And in many cases, those systems that are up and running for so many years now are providing good examples. So yeah, I think these things all take time, Barbara, and you know, for many years we've worked with this. So I think patience is the situation, yeah. But it means we also have to not be sitting back and not thinking very clearly about dealing with the new challenges. You mentioned very nicely the issue of competition within and coming from outside communities. I mean, dealing with those things are also now going to become new challenges for the multiple use systems. But thanks for all the presentations. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks very much for sharing. Henk, you are raising the issue that moose and household water systems are key for development in general, but how to find the funds to promote it and how to get it more into the national plans and especially the funding then. The African Union calculated that it takes $100 billion to reach SDG 6.1 in Africa, but what percentage of this budget is planned for moose or for self-supply? And I couldn't agree more that the funding streams are really shaping the sectors. And the combining then money from the Department of Agriculture and the water water supply subsidies remains difficult. What do you think yourself, Henk?
Yeah, first of all, I think that we have been talking so many times and so many years about the potential and the need to scale up both models of, at family level, Muse is self-supply is Muse automatically, as we discussed many times. So, so I think the big challenge is to create more awareness on its potential, because in many plans for agriculture and wars in countries in Africa, it's not even mentioned. Arto just mentioned that in Ethiopia, for at least now, self-supply is mentioned in the national program for the next 5 years. So that could become an example, because they now see it as a priority to scale up self-supply and to support self-supply. So the big challenge, I think, is how to get this example from Ethiopia to other countries. How can we get more publicity on this potential of self-supply? Because many people either don't know self-supply or they have a wrong perception on self-supply. So I think there's still a big challenge to get a better image on self-supply.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I can also refer to the white paper in which James Otieno indicates how performance-based financing can, it's under discussion, allocate money for just domestic users, or allocate more money than if a system, and not necessarily self-supply, but if a public system gives water for multiple uses, that in the financing rules, can be realized. So, which gives an answer on the question that was posed. Yeah. And awareness. Yeah. The wrong image. The wrong image of self-supply is worse than lack of knowledge. Yeah. But from an irrigation perspective, farmer-led irrigation development is now taking over. There is still some talk about subsidy for public schemes and O&M of public irrigation schemes, but it's clear that the irrigation, that farmer-led irrigation development is at a much larger scale happening with all the issues. The main issue there is how to make sure that it is not a few big users in a village, and certainly outside the village, then take all the water. So how can we not leave anyone behind, etc. Wow. I see.
Sorry, the time is.
Thank you.
Up. Yeah, thank you so much, Barbara and Narayan. So the team leaders are still here on the meeting. So if you have still more questions, please ask them on the chat box. And we'd like to invite Muti and Mutala for the Data for Action section.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are based in the world. My name is Mutala Abdul Mumin, and I work with WaterAid as a WASH monitoring and financing senior advisor, and specifically with the Department of International Programs. And I'm working closely with Muti, who is also on this call, and I would want him to briefly introduce himself. Thank you for joining, because Muti was supposed to be part of a meeting. If many of you may be aware, Malawi is currently hit by drought. And so there's a state of emergency to see how best the country can resolve this. So happy to have you, Muti.
Oh, sorry, Muti, we can't hear you.
Hello? Yes, we can hear you now. Sorry, we missed you. We are losing you again. No, we can't hear you.
Maybe the headset, is problematic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Very low.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, that's better.
Okay, my mic was that side. That's technology. Hi, everyone. This is Muti from Malawi, and thank you, Mutala, for acknowledging the situation we're in at the moment. Yes, we've been hit by drought and we're in a state of national disaster. So there were some meetings that came up that required my attention. But always glad to be part of this space. And yeah, looking forward to the conversation. My name is Muti Khema. I'm the theme lead for Data for Action, and I work for an organization called Baseflow that is based in Malawi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Muti. And it's very interesting to have heard the previous groups speak about issues around data. And we must all acknowledge that data is key to the work we do. And so for a team that is looking at data for action or decision making, we are very happy to make this presentation and also looking forward to collaborating with other teams and colleagues to see how we can promote decision making which is grounded on data. So our priorities have been to finalize the development and dissemination of a practice guide for the establishment of National Management Information System for WASH. We mostly work with organizations that are either in the private sector or international NGOs. And we agree that most of these organizations have very robust monitoring systems in place. But the governments that we work with are sometimes very much challenged when it comes to management information systems. And we know that decision making that is grounded on data is really very helpful. And so as a team, we have been working on this to see how we can develop this practice guide. And we are always reaching out to colleagues to find out if anyone has some information of an existing practice guide that helps governments to establish a national management information system for WASH. Also to say that we want to provide the Rural Water Supply Network members with hands-on practical examples of how data is being applied to address common WASH complexities, especially concerning climate resilience. And we just hearing the challenge with Malawi. And you know, many other countries are facing some of these climate-induced challenges. And so as a team, we are looking at how we can promote very good examples and to see how people can learn from that and adapt as we move on. Next slide, please. Our highlight for 2025. So in terms of webinars and data clinics, the first one, we moderated a webinar on making data work for climate financing with the following statistics. We had 197 attending. That was about 44% of attendance rate. And we had 28 questions during the session. And we all agree that there are a lot of opportunities that countries and organizations can take advantage of when it comes to climate financing. But there are a lot of conditions and some standards that organizations and countries must meet. And we're trying to see where some good examples were so that people can learn from this and then see how best we can unlock some of these financing opportunities. Then the second one, unfortunately, due to the USAID cuts, the data clinics were not delivered. It was something that we hoped to do. And we did reach out to Evidence Action to share how they use data to make the hard decision to scale down their chlorine dispenser program in Kenya. So we are still pursuing this, and we want to indicate that you watch out. Very soon we'll be sharing some update on this as well. Then with the practice guide working group, we tried to establish a working group to help develop the practice guide. And members of this group include myself and Muti, and then we have Jacqueline, who used to work with M Water and based in Tanzania. We have Isaac Toby, who works with the National Wash Commission of Liberia. And then we have Vasco, who works with Community Water and Sanitation Agency in Ghana. We have since conducted a scoping study to determine whether a practice guide already exists, so we avoid inventing the wheel, and any major lessons on national monitoring information systems, and also key findings. So our key findings include, for any country that intends to do this, it's advised that you start simple to succeed. Countries that begin with basic tools and a small indicator set achieve stronger and more sustainable MIS systems. And also key to this is leadership and collaboration leads to sustainability. Government ownership, strong partner collaboration, and ongoing capacity building are the core drivers of effective national wash management information system platforms. And for some of us who have been involved in this, we see that for most management information system that has been project-based, immediately the project ends, sometimes even paying for subscription of the tools that are used for data collection becomes a challenge. And then we're also looking at developing a blog highlighting the key findings from the scoping study. So this is something that we have been working on, and we hope to share it in due course. Next slide, please. So our plan for 2026, we intend to finalize and disseminate the practice guide for establishing National Management Information System for WASH, and we are calling on other teams and colleagues to please see this as a priority for us, and we are inviting you to support in this regard. And then also to crowdsource suggestions for webinar topics to complement or to be complemented by follow-up data clinics, which focus on real-life data journeys of organizations that had made operations and strategic decisions. So what we are saying is that we have people who are very much interested in data for action. What are some of the ideas they have and the topics of interest that we really think can address the issues within the space, and also to get very good examples around the world that we can share for people to learn from. So thank you. And if there are any questions, we are happy to respond.
Thank you, Mutala. This is Muti here. Just to complement what my brother from another mother has shared, I think with regards to the National Management Information System, I think for us the practice guide is kind of a manual, even though that it wouldn't be that prescriptive. It's more of a guide in terms of trying to say, if you are in a country that doesn't have a management information system for WASH, what would be the key steps? What are the things you need to think about? What technologies are available that you can access to actually get started? What are some key important indicators to start using as you go on this journey of having a national management information system? What standards do you need to have in place? What are some of the pitfalls you need to be aware of as you are establishing this national management information system? So this is really a guide that someone can open and see, okay, I'm at this stage of our evolution. What are the things I need to be concerned about? So this is meant to be a living document that sort of synthesizes a lot of experiences from different organizations and countries to kind of come up with a roadmap for how do you start and where do you end and how do you continue to evolve over time. So I think that's something that I also wanted to clarify. There's a question in the chat from Fabio. This working group is not just for data for climate financing. The data for making data work for climate financing was a webinar that we did this year. This particular working group is focused on trying to develop the practice guide for establishing a national management information system for WASH. So if you are interested in joining, we are open to having new members. So if this is something you're interested in wanting to contribute to, you can get in touch with myself or Mutala, and then we could bring you up to speed in terms of where we're at with activities. We've only just started. We had, I think, our first meeting. We've done the scoping, and now we actually want to go through the process of collecting the information to develop this practice guide. So yeah, I just wanted to say that before we open it up to Q&A.
Thank you, Muti.
Oh, sorry. If I could just, there was one other thing I wanted to clarify. Whoever's controlling the slides, could you, okay, fine, the slides are gone. But anyway, there was a mention of the data clinics and USAID. It wasn't necessarily, just to clarify, USAID was a co-partner in the data clinics. We had some colleagues from USAID, and it was a collaboration between RWSN and USAID. Now, with the cuts to USAID, that kind of support and network was lost, but we are still talking to colleagues, for example, Dr. Katie Sill, to see if they can still, there's still a willingness to engage, but it will not be a collaboration with USAID, but it will be a standalone RWSN initiative. And if other partners are willing to collaborate on the data clinics, which is a really hands-on practical session where we sit with one organization and the system that they work on and to try to understand how they deal with various aspects of their system. So the webinar is more of you have 2 or 3 organizations and that talk on a specific topic. The data clinics is looking at really sinking our teeth into a specific system. So that's the differences between the two things. So the webinar is your standard webinar. The data clinics is really hands-on, really asking the questions about how are you dealing with that? How are you dealing with this? So I also wanted to provide that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Muti. So Ellen, if you can facilitate the Q&A session.
I think now, if anyone wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand or put the question on the chat box so that we can go through them. But meanwhile, we had a few questions that were channeled through the registration form. So if you want, we could get started with some of those as people think about their questions now.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem. Thank you, Aline, for sharing the questions, and thank you to everyone who sent us questions. As always, you like making my life and Mutala's life miserable. So anyway, some of the questions that we picked up on, I think there was a question or I think a general comment on how to deepen collaboration with other RWSN themes. I think Mutala, you even mentioned, I think at the beginning, that I think the subject of data is showing up in the other themes. So I think it's a very interesting point that maybe we could explore with the other theme leads in terms of how we can look at data for action, but see how it overlaps with maybe with leaving no one behind or MOOS or sustainable groundwater services, because I think we did do something with leaving no one behind. I think the year before last, which was actually quite interesting. And someone put a question about that, how we can deal with collecting data in fragile states. So there is a webinar that we did the year before last that brought the Leaving No One Behind theme group and the Data for Action, specifically looking at fragile states. Aline or Batima, if you can find the link to that particular webinar and share it in the chat, if there are others who would be interested to see how that was dealt with. So yeah, I think Mutala, I think you on the subject, because I came in the middle, you said the groups were also talking about how bringing up data in their specific areas. Could you maybe just walk the participants through how data was sort of showing up in all the other thematic groups? Yeah.
Yes. So, for instance, issues around self-supply. There was an example of a country, I don't remember specifically, which had about 10,000 in terms of what was showing in their records. But studies showed that there were more than that number, hundreds more, yes, in terms of. So, for instance, if you talk about self-supply, who is regulating it? And issues around regulation, you can only regulate when you know where these boreholes or rainwater harvesting points are? Do they meet a certain benchmark? And also, let's not forget that it's a natural resource that we are all extracting. And so as individuals are extracting, others are also being denied. So if we have a good data, how then do we make sure that no one is left behind? And also very interesting is that how much are households paying on or spending on self-supply compared to people who are benefiting from utilities. So if we have this data, it's something to say that why don't we then find a way of channeling this towards a utility that is more sustainable rather than having to put the burden on individuals at the household level. And we also know that we have very hard to reach communities or areas where maybe a utility may not be interested. But without data, we are not able to make these kind of comparisons and analysis to be able to take very informed decisions that will help us make sure we don't leave anyone behind. So data is key, and it really came up, especially with the self-supply discussion. Yes.
And I think I caught the conversation when I think Barbara, there was a conversation and exchange between Barbara and Hank. And I think there was a mention that Ethiopia is an example. Is it that maybe I don't know if Barbara or Hank are online? Is it that in terms of, because it would be very interesting to see the subject of self-supply done or moose done in Ethiopia. Is it have they been able to sort of, is the government actually tracking multiple use systems or self-supply systems as well? Actually, I have no idea. So I wanted to sort of learn from you, because I think, Hank, you did mention that Ethiopia is an example. So I was wondering whether it's an example also in terms of tracking this, because it would be interesting to understand how they're tracking it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe Arto Suomin, who is online, I guess, also knows more about the tracking.
Okay.
I do know that Ethiopia has a program, a long time had a program that they would fund up to 50% of the investment cost of families. If there's 5 to 10 families together, they would fund up to 50% of the cost of the investment to stimulate these families to invest in them, in their self-supply, in their water support. But the tracking, good question. Maybe Arto knows, maybe he's still online. If not, we can ask, because I think you have a good point. Of course, tracking self-supply is always much more difficult than the bigger systems that
pipe systems. Yeah.
We have discussed also the self-supply in Malawi. We have asked, do you have an idea how many rope pumps are there, for instance? Or often are used for self-supply. It's much more difficult, but it's a good question. We will try to find out.
And I think maybe at some point we can engage across with the different themes to see where we can find that link between data and how data is showing up in all of these other areas, and trying to see what teething problems are being experienced. Thanks for that. To everyone, thanks, Barbara. To everyone, to the gentleman, to the person who asked about data and in fragile states. Thank you, Batima. She shared the link to the webinar we had the year before last, so you can have a look at that to just sort of see what that experience was. Isaac, thank you for your question on I believe we can't have this.
I think
go ahead.
Arto had unmuted, so maybe is it ready to speak now, Arto, from the Ethiopian example.
Fine, great. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. In Ethiopia, those self-supplies which have been supported by the government, they are monitored by the district authorities. So they have a database of those ones. Okay.
And the government and the district government pays for that exercise. They're the ones who are going out and doing they pay for the expenses to actually go out and collect that data, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, fine. Okay, fine. No, thank you for that clarification.
A quick follow-up. I just wanted to find out, whether in Ethiopia, with regards to the data collection, do you have like a platform where all the information you collect is captured and then you update it as and when? just to understand the tool behind the data collection.
Yeah, it's done annually.
On what platform? Maybe a live platform or a standalone?
No, it is physically collected by the district water officers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Isaac. I think you put a question in the chat. You're spotlighted. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for spotlighting me. My question was contributing to the fact that what happens if we have all these programs that extract water from the ground. One time I was interacting with the government official from the water department here in Mzuzu, Malawi, and he told me that they don't have much to do with water harvesting, yet they're encouraging extraction of the same water from groundwater. So my question to this forum was around whether, as we are implementing programs worldwide, we have that integration with programs that harvest rainwater. At several forums, myself and Henk, we've had very nice presentations side by side where I talk about water harvesting using the deep farming, which we promote as TN in Malawi. And it made a lot of sense when I said once we harvest the water and then Henk through Meta and smart centers harvest that same water from the ground. So participants and we are so happy to link up the two. So I was wondering if in these programs, RWSN, we also have such programs which integrate the two components, which go hand in hand. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I've noticed a hand from Fabio. Thank you, Isaac, for your question. I think RWSN as a network is focused a lot on knowledge sharing, capacity building, but mostly through knowledge sharing. And examples like the one you've provided, what RWSN would do is provide the platform for you to share that experience in terms of what are the steps you took, what advocacy did you go through to actually come to that position, or what lessons did you come up with? So I think there are several thematic groups. I think it sounds like what you're talking about is sustainable groundwater. So there is a theme group for that. But I think the one you've brought up is actually still interesting for data, because then the question, I think, for the work that you're doing has always been, how do we track that this approach is actually recharging groundwater? So that's the data component there in terms of the work that you're doing. So I think it's a very interesting area that will the approach actually do what it claims to do? So thank you for that contribution, Isaac. I see Fabio, you are spotlighted. Over to you, Fabio.
You are muted.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Now,
yep.
Can you listen to me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay. Okay. Then, concerning the fact of data, I think that there are basically two aspects that I would like to raise it. Because many times they told me, okay, there is no data in a country, the data are not available publicly on the internet. Like even in Europe, a lot of data are not available on the internet. So I think in many countries there are much more data than what we think.
Yeah.
There must be done an effort to standardize the data and put in clean the data. And also another aspect is that there is a lot of data still on paper or not in numeric format that would require a lot of effort, manual effort, but in order not to lose them, it will be important to transform and integrate in numeric platform. I imagine, for example, hydrogeological data from water point constructed 10, 20, 30 years ago. And this type of data, if you lose it, you cannot recover later.
Yeah.
So with a water point mapping now, you cannot recover the data. That's the first aspect. So put effort in scanning, recovering, and putting in digital and numeric format all the data not available in organized digital database now. And the second aspect, in many countries, I found there are a lot of data, much more than when I started this 20 years ago or so. The device for data collection are quite easy. Now they are full of devices for data collection, but still, I think that the capacity at local level, regional level, to analyze this data, to take decisions is extremely low. In many countries, I see large database, but basically what they've done is to visualize the data and nothing more. So advanced data analysis using the powerful amount of data that we have now is still a very weak point. There is very, very weak effort on that, in my opinion.
No, I think thank you for Fabio for that. It's interesting you said this because I think in one of the questions that came, and I was actually going to speak to this, is the issue of data digitalization. It seems it is a serious problem because a lot of data is still sitting in Excel sheets and PDFs, and if anything was to happen, for example, a fire or a flood, and all of that is in hard copy, all that data is gone. So I think it's a very interesting subject that would be interesting to explore, Mutala.
Yes.
This idea of where we now that we're moving digital, how do we take the hard copy that's there? What tools exist? What approaches exist? What have other organizations and countries done? So Fabio, I think this is something it also came up in the chat and you brought it up here as well. So I think we will look to see how we can look at data digitalization. And fair point about what you said. There are systems that exist that have a lot of data. They visualize the data and nothing more. And I think this is kind of why we've set up this particular theme group, because we want to move from simply having data to trying to figure out how can that data be used to make decisions. So I think this is something that we, and this is why we're doing the practice guide as a way of trying to help people make that step. But I've taken your point of data digitalization. It came up as a comment, and I think it's one that I think we'll take into consideration. Thank you, Fabio.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. That's fantastic. And just thank you to all of our fantastic theme leaders. You can tell the passion and enthusiasm for their topics, and not just for their topics, but everyone else's topics as well. And that's what's really nice, just integrating those different interests. Let me just check that I did actually probably share the screen. Yes. So we've come to the end of part 1 of our RWSN annual meeting. So we've heard from 3 of the 6 of themes. With part 2, which is more for the Americas time zones, we will have presentations and Q&A with our other 3 themes. So if you are willing and able to join that part, the beginning bit will be the same as we presented this morning, but once we get past that bit, you'll get to the new content. But otherwise, I would just like to the recordings from both sessions will be made available through our online channels on YouTube and Vimeo. But just thank you for the fantastic participation, fantastic questions, and really just to finish off, just saying that we've got one more webinar coming up, which is next week, which is on rapid corrosion of hand pumps. Can we finally address this issue? So that's part of the Stop the Rot project. And so I hope many of you will be able to join there. But otherwise, as closing remarks of this part, I would just like to thank all of our fantastic theme leaders. Thank you to all of you for participating, and see you at the next one. Thank you very much.